In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please have a seat. Just for information, we have a 3-year cycle in our readings. So 3 years, we look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke on a 3-year cycle. But the Gospel of John is saved for events in Jesus' life, significant events. So we read it, for example, on Christmas Day. We read it again in Holy Week. And we read it today. Every year we read this reading about Cana of Galilee and the turning of the water into wine. And it is interesting that the other Gospel writers don't include this story in their Gospels. John was most likely written a fair bit after the other Gospels. And I found it interesting, not all of Jesus' disciples were with him at this point. Only 5 of them had been chosen. This is early on in his career. So there's Peter and Andrew and James and John and Nathaniel. There was only 5 who were at this event. So John saw what happened here. But it's also perhaps because it's not a particularly spectacular miracle. Nobody gets healed. Thousands of folk don't get fed. Nature is not tamed. It's just something happened behind the scenes at a couple's wedding. No big deal, no big fuss. And so they may be a bit embarrassed about why put this in, you know. And I love it because it's a very Anglican story. It involves wine, okay? But also it's because it's really affirming of life. One of the reasons I'm an Anglican Episcopalian is because we as a denomination, as a church, on the whole, tend to err, if we're going to err anywhere, tend to err on the side of affirming life, affirming what is good in society, affirming what is good of God's image within us, rather than now. We also have confession and penance and all these things are very important, but we as a denomination are not afraid to affirm what is good in our humanity. And this story of a young couple getting married is kind of core human life cycle stuff. And as most of you will know, you know, if you ran out of wine at your wedding in those days, it was really bad news. So 20 years on, wee Benny would have still, oh, Benny, yeah, his mum and dad, they ran out of wine at their wedding. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. It would have stayed over the family in these small communities for a long time to come. So it was a real moment of potential social disaster for this young couple. And of course, Jesus steps in. Every year I preach on this passage, and I always have different things to say. So it's remarkable what the Bible can give you if you're able just to sit with it. And I really do encourage you to regularly read the Bible and just sit with some of this stuff. Some of the stuff that you know so well. Sometimes you know it too well that you don't see things anymore. And it's really good to come around these stories again and just let them sit with you. And I think John chose this story for a couple of reasons. It is the first of 7 signs for John, so he's a big guy about giving signs. And this one, he says, this is a sign. The others, he doesn't. I think only one other, he says, this is a sign. The other ones, you have to kind of guess what are the signs. But they are all signs pointing towards who Jesus is going to be. And of course, the ultimate sign is Jesus' death on the cross. But for John, the significance of this event is the replacement of the water, the ceremonial purification in these 6 jars of 20 or 30 gallons. These are big jars of water. And in a country which does not have much flowing water, that water would have had to be pulled up from the well, highly likely by the ladies of the community, filled up. A lot of work goes into, for the Jewish people, this was serious business for them. Purification for them was a big deal for 2 reasons. One, it kept them on the right side of God. It kept them on the right side of God. It told them what they needed to do, what was the right thing to do. And this comes all the way through their culture and their society, right from the days in the desert. So whether it was washing your hands before a meal, whether it was washing your hands before you went into prayer, whether it was purification rites around menstruation and childbirth, it was a big thing for the Jewish people. And all this water in a very drought-ridden land signifies the importance of this trip. A lot of work went into doing this. But they did it because they knew it kept them right with God, and they knew it was the right thing to do. Second significance of this practice is amongst a really complex polyglot, multi-faith, multicultural society around them in the Middle East at that time. You had the Greeks, you had the Romans, you had the Persians, you had the Syrians, you had the Egyptians. I mean, it was nuts. It was absolute. And you had this little group of people who were trying to be different. And this was the big thing that made them different, was the purification rites. The sense of purity, that we are different from other people, that they worked hard at this sense of purification, so it was an identity marker for them. So these two things kept them on the right side of God, and it gave them an identity for who they were as a group. So John is writing this about, say, 50, 60 years after Jesus has died. So the early church is kind of finding its feet and finding its way amongst this world. And one of the big issues of the early church was what to do with the Jewish stuff. You know? Jesus was a Jew. How much of the Jewish stuff translates over to the new bits of doing things? Hard. And you can draw a direct line from this story to Acts 10, where Peter has his vision about the unclean animals being let down from heaven, and the voice from heaven saying, eat them, it's fine. Kosher is not a deal anymore, it's fine. Everything's kosher now. That's a big deal for them. And then from there to Acts 15, when the church council met in Jerusalem, and they decided after a big conclave of discussing all this stuff to not impose Jewish rituals on everybody else. Thank God for that. Otherwise, we'd all have to be circumcised today, you know, and eat kosher food, which is fine. But that would have been the legacy. It was a big point in the church's journey, what to do with the Jews. It was a big deal for them. And in this story, John is saying, well, in the words of Bob Dylan, the times are changing. The film comes out tomorrow. Looking forward to it. Maybe today, you know. Anyway, looking forward to the new film about Bob Dylan. But the times are changing. And the significance of Jesus replacing all the ceremonial purification with his wine, the symbol of his blood, which we'll be celebrating in a wee while. This is a powerful sign for John. And of course, Jesus, at the time, nobody knew what was going on, but they could later on read back into the story. Oh, that's what was going on then. That was the clue that this is what would happen. And this may seem a little bit esoteric and out there for us, but we all have our versions of this, ceremonial water jugs. We all have our versions of, well, A, how to keep on the right side of God. But our version of that might simply be the right thing to believe, the right thing to do. And we can get very defensive about that. We can lines in the sand, all that kind of thing. And sometimes the aspect of fear that comes into that, holding on to the right thing to do, because we're not sure of what's next. We're not sure if we change this, what does that mean? And from a place in which some of these traditions had a place, they had a role to play, there comes a point in time where they are now outdated, they are being replaced with something else. And it's really hard to move through that change. That new thing, the times are changing, it is hard. We can also have some of these positions that we hold, or beliefs that we have, or habits, or the way we even relate to certain people, because they're identity markers of who we are. We've done this thing forever, we can't imagine doing anything different. And these habits are there, and it's hard to change them because it's part of who we are. It's part of who we are. An example might be, I'm a bit late comer to a lot of things in life, you know. But one of them is, you know, I wasn't somebody that was particularly interested in art. Now, that may not be something that's a big deal for people, but I always saw myself as an outdoors kind of guy, an active kind of guy, and all this kind of thing, you know what I mean? And I'm coming to this recalibrating my brain saying, Paul, you can be a different kind of bloke, you know. I mean, you know, you can pay attention to your most sensitive side. It's okay to do that, you know, and develop this side of yourself. But there are habits of understanding of ourselves that we can get so stuck in that we can't change. And on our aspirational signboard outside, we have this kind of transforming lives, serving the community thing, you know? And what we do, we had lots, I wasn't even at it yesterday. We had loads of dads and toddlers. Willie was there, and Fiona's husband, Ian, was there. We had new people coming, and they're all making connections. Serving the community is what we do, right? But the transforming lives bit is my vision for you guys, that no matter how old we are, we're open to change in ourselves and what we do. And this is what this story is all about, is this wonderful time of change. This Conclave film. Kennedy sends me emails now and again. Kennedy is my conduit into the wider world out there. So he sent me an email last week and said, you've got to check this article out, you know. And it's about the new film Conclave, which I haven't seen. Phil and Peter has, so you can ask them about it. And this is not giving away anything. But there's a line in the film where the cardinals are all talking, I presume. And one of the cardinals says, the church is not our history. The church is not our tradition. The church is what we do next. The church is what we do next. Church, for most folk and for me, is a noun. You say the word church, you think of a building, you think of a bunch of people, you think of it's a noun. But I love to think of church as a verb. Church is a verb, what we do next. Well, I've got a new bishop, and it's now 11 o'clock, so I'm allowed to tell you, but I won't tell you, because Phil is going to come and tell you immediately after this sermon, okay? We have a new bishop, she will tell you about who that person is. I won't even give the gender away. But it's exciting times, but times are changing for our diocese. In the presentations from the different candidates, we had a lot of energy there, and even in the room, a sense of we want new things, and we're not quite sure what that means. The church is what we do next. Even in our own congregation, we had a meeting with the architect on Tuesday at Vestry, and in theory, if we get the figures back from quantity surveys and so on, we will have a church meeting on the 23rd of February, okay? Which will give you all the information that you need, and we'll take a vote on whether we go ahead with some of these changes or not, okay? The times are changing for us. Church is what we do next. It's not just basically what we do with the building, but what we do with our lives and how we engage with people. One of the things we're doing is we're partnering with the local library. We're having a series of talks in the local library. The community don't know this. St. James's name is not in there, but I'm organising it behind the scenes. And I haven't told you about it because it's already sold out. So they're expanding it into the main library now. So if you want to go, I'll send you an email about that. One of my dads and toddlers' dads is giving a talk about neuroscience and society. A talk next month is going to be about the environment. Talk in March is going to be all about business ethics and so on. Partnering with the community to make a difference here. The times are changing. Church is what we do next. So there's something from this passage today which is exciting, calls us to newness. No matter how old we are, there's always something old. Now, just a final wee thought. A reading from Isaiah. A reading from Isaiah is a very powerful reading. And it's written from, apart from one line, which is slightly worrying for me, there's a wee line towards the end. So shall your builder marry you. I'm not sure if I wanted my builder to marry me, but anyway, there we go. Apart from that, it's a great passage. It is taken from the depths of exile. The people of Israel feel totally forgotten. They feel totally abandoned by God. They feel rubbish. As it says here, it's very powerful, verse 4 in Isaiah 62. You shall no more be termed forsaken. Maybe you have felt forsaken in your life at some times, by God, by other people. Your land shall no more be termed desolate. Sometimes you feel desolate with grief and loss and a sense of hurt and pain. But you should be called, my delight is in her. And your land shall be called married. That sense of being treasured by another person, being valued by another person. For the Lord delights in you, and your land shall be married. And this is written about 800 years before Jesus came. But it's looking towards that time where God will come to Israel and pour out his love on them. For as a young man marries a young woman, so shall your builder marry you. I'm not sure about that. And your bridegroom rejoices over the bride. My dad's in hospital at the moment. He's a poor wee soul up at Kilmarnock. I took my mum there to see him the other day. She's with us for a few days at the moment. And she hobbles, and there's going to be 60th wedding anniversary coming up in April, 16th. And he saw her, and he was rejoicing over her, you know? Rejoicing over his bride of 60 years, that sense of love, and now the wee old folks kiss and all that kind of thing. It's wonderful. Lovely stuff. We can feel desolate. We feel desolate at times as a family, that aren't sure what's happening with my dad and so on. But times are changing. Church is what we do next. God is with us, and God will be with us in all the days ahead. He delights in us.